Hey everybody, and welcome back to Sip. And today we're going to tackle like a really big question.
Ooh, I like big questions.
Yeah, you know, one that's like puzzled thinkers for centuries. And it's the question of causality.
Causality, okay.
Like, is everything that happens like really because of something else that happened before it?
Like cause and effect, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, is the universe just like a giant chain reaction of cause and effect, or is there more to it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question that's been debated, you know, for ages by philosophers and scientists and, you know, just about everyone who likes to think about how the world works.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're going to try to, you know, unpack that question a little bit today and see, you know, what we can discover.
Sounds good. I'm ready to dive in.
Okay, well, I'm ready to dive in too. But before we get like super deep into it, maybe we should like start with a little bit of a framework, a way to think about this whole causality thing.
Okay, I like frameworks.
Me too. It helps to like organize our thoughts, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so one way to think about causality is through this concept called the slippery slope argument.
Oh, the slippery slope argument.
Yeah, have you heard of that one?
I have.
Okay, good. Because I feel like every time I try to explain it to someone, they're like, what are you talking about?
It can be a tricky one.
Yeah, basically it's this idea that like if one thing happens, then like a whole bunch of other things are going to happen as a result, even if those connections aren't like super obvious or direct.
It's like a chain reaction of consequences, kind of.
Exactly. It's like saying, okay, if we allow A to happen, then B is definitely going to happen, and then C, and then D, and before you know it, we're like living in some kind of dystopian nightmare world.
Yeah, like that time I decided to have just one little scoop of ice cream.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Yeah, and then ended up eating the entire pint.
Oh, that's the worst. And then you feel so bad afterward.
I know. I was like, why did I do that?
It's like that moment of weakness where you just can't resist.
And exactly, slippery slope in action.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, sometimes slippery slope arguments are valid. Like sometimes those connections are real, and we need to be aware of the potential consequences of our actions.
Right. Like if you don't study for a test, you might fail the test, and then you might fail the class, and then you might not graduate, and then...
Oh, my gosh. Don't even go there.
Okay, I'll stop.
But, you know, other times, slippery slope arguments are just like scare tactics. You know, like people use them to try to prevent something from happening, even if the actual likelihood of all those bad things happening is pretty slim.
Yeah, it's like when people say, if we legalize marijuana, then everyone's going to start doing heroin.
Right. Or like if we allow same-sex marriage, then people are going to start marrying their pets.
That's a little extreme.
I know. But you get the idea.
I do.
So the slippery slope argument can be a useful tool for thinking about causality. But we have to be careful not to like oversimplify things or to use it to justify like irrational fears.
I agree. It's all about finding that balance, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of balance, there are actually different types of slippery slope arguments.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
Yeah, so there's the logical slippery slope, the empirical slippery slope, and the precedential slippery slope.
Wait, hold on. Slow down for a second. I need to process all this.
Okay, no problem. Take your time.
Okay, so we've got 3 flavors of slippery slopes: logical, empirical, and precedential.
Right. It's like a slippery slope sundae with 3 scoops of doom.
Okay. That sounds a bit dramatic.
I know, but it's kind of fun to think about it that way.
All right, I'll give you that. So explain these slippery slope flavors to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
Okay, so imagine a logical slippery slope like this. If you eat a cookie, you'll want another cookie and then another cookie until you've eaten the whole bag of cookies.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's basically saying that the logic is there. Like, if you enjoy one cookie, you'll probably enjoy more cookies.
Yeah.
But there's no guarantee that it'll actually happen. You know, you might stop at one cookie, or you might have some self-control and save the rest for later.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, an empirical slippery slope uses real-world examples to back up its claims, like statistics showing that areas with more relaxed gun laws have higher rates of gun violence.
So it's based on actual data.
Exactly. And then a precedential slippery slope argues that allowing one thing will set a precedent for allowing more extreme things down the line.
Like a domino effect.
Exactly. It's like saying if we allow this one thing, then it'll open the floodgates and all sorts of crazy things will happen.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to get it.
So the slippery slope argument can be a powerful tool for thinking about causality. But it's important to be aware of the different types of slippery slopes and to critically evaluate the evidence before we jump to any conclusions.
Agreed. It's all about thinking critically and not letting our emotions get the best of us.
Exactly. So are we ready to dive deeper into this causality rabbit hole?
I'm ready if you are.
Okay, Let's do it, but first I need another cookie.
Oh, no, not the slippery slope again.
Just kidding, maybe.
Okay, let's move on before you change your mind.
All right. So to really understand this whole causality thing, we need to look at the evidence both for and against the idea that everything has a cause.
Yeah, let's start with the case for causality. Like, what are some of the arguments that support this idea?
Okay, well, one of the most compelling arguments for causality comes from the world of science, particularly physics.
Oh, physics, one of my favorite subjects.
Mine too. It's like the study of how the universe works at its most fundamental level.
Exactly. And how does physics support the idea of causality?
Well, think about Isaac Newton and his laws of motion. Those laws basically say that we can predict what's going to happen based on what's happening right now. Like, if we know the position and velocity of an object, we can calculate where it's going to be in the future.
So it's like a perfectly predictable game of billiards. You hit the ball, you know where it's going to go.
Exactly. It's all about cause and effect.
Okay, but what about things that aren't as predictable, like the weather or human behavior?
Well, that's where things get a little bit more complicated. But even in those cases, many scientists believe that there are underlying causes that we just haven't fully understood yet.
So it's like we're still figuring out all the pieces of the puzzle.
Exactly. And, even when things get a bit fuzzier, like in the wacky world of quantum physics, some pretty smart cookies still held on to the idea that cause and effect rules the universe.
Like who, for example?
Well, Einstein, for one, he believed in deeper deterministic laws, even though quantum physics introduced the idea that things aren't always so predictable.
So even with all that weird quantum stuff where particles can be in two places at once, the idea of cause and effect still holds some weight.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the butterfly effect. In chaos theory, they show us that even the teeniest, tiniest changes can have massive consequences.
Like that saying, a flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil can set off a tornado in Texas.
Exactly. It's mind-blowing, right?
It is. It makes you realize that everything is connected in some way.
Yeah, and that even small actions can have big consequences.
So we've got physics seemingly on the side of cause and effect, but are there any real-world examples that back this up, or is it all theoretical?
Oh, there are definitely some historical events that seem to support this whole idea of cause and effect, and slippery slopes. Take World War II, for example. Many historians argue that appeasing Hitler early on actually emboldened him and gave him the confidence to keep pushing, which ultimately contributed to the outbreak of the war.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty heavy example.
It's a reminder that our choices can have far-reaching consequences.
And that sometimes those slippery slopes are all too real.
Exactly. But it's not just historical events. Think about the impact of social media on mental health.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
There's growing evidence that excessive social media use can be linked to negative mental health outcomes, especially in young people.
So we're talking about the potential for a slippery slope where allowing unrestricted access to social media leads to a generation struggling with mental health issues.
It's a concern that many researchers and policymakers are grappling with. And it highlights how even seemingly small choices or trends can have far-reaching consequences. It's like we're always navigating a web of cause and effect, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, it's a complex issue for sure.
So we've got physics history and even our social media habits pointing in the direction of cause and effect.
It's a pretty strong case so far, but I'm curious to hear the other side of the story. Like, what are some of the arguments against causality?
Ooh, that's where things get really interesting, but we'll have to save that for part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay, I can't wait.
So stay tuned, folks, because we're just getting started.
This is going to be good.
All right, talking about causality and, is everything that happens really because of something else?
Yeah, we're building a pretty strong case for cause and effect, right?
Yeah, we had physics on our side and, history and even social media seem to be pointing in that direction.
Right, but you promised there was another side to the story.
Oh, yeah. It's like the universe likes to keep us on our toes.
So spill the beans. What are some of the arguments against the idea that everything has a cause?
Okay, well, for starters, we've got quantum physics throwing a wrench into the whole everything has a cause machine.
Oh, quantum physics, always a good time for some mind-bending concepts. How does it challenge the idea of cause and effect?
Well, remember the Heisenberg uncertainty principle we talked about?
Vaguely, it's something about not being able to know everything about a particle at the same time, right?
Yeah, basically it says that we can't know both the position and momentum of a particle with perfect accuracy at the same time.
So it's like the more we know about where something is, the less we know about where it's going.
Exactly. And that introduces an element of randomness at the subatomic level, which kind of throws a wrench in those deterministic gears.
So you're saying that at the very core of reality, things might just happen randomly without a specific cause?
It's a possibility. And then there's quantum entanglement, where two particles are linked in such a way that they can instantly affect each other regardless of distance.
Whoa, that's like some spooky action at a distance stuff.
Yeah, Einstein wasn't a fan of it either. But the experimental evidence for entanglement is pretty solid.
So we've got these tiny particles that seem to be breaking the rules of cause and effect.
It's like the universe is saying, hey, I don't always play by your rules.
Okay, so quantum physics is definitely shaking things up, but what about the real world? Are there any examples where those slippery slopes we talked about just didn't pan out?
You bet. Let's take the legalization of same-sex marriage. Opponents often use the slippery slope argument, saying it would lead to all sorts of societal chaos and moral decay.
Right, like people would start marrying their pets.
Yeah, that was a common one. But in countries where it's been legalized, those predicted disasters simply haven't happened.
So the slippery slope turned out to be more of a gentle hill.
Exactly. Life just went on as usual.
And what about the legalization of marijuana?
Another good example. Many predicted it would lead to widespread drug abuse and societal breakdown. But in places where it's been legalized and regulated, those predictions haven't come to pass.
So sometimes those slippery slopes are just illusions created by our anxieties.
It seems like we tend to overestimate the potential negative consequences of change.
All right, so we've got quantum physics shaking up determinism and real-world examples where those feared slippery slopes didn't materialize. What about philosophy? Any philosophers out there who question this whole causality thing?
Oh, absolutely. Enter David Hume, a Scottish philosopher who loved to poke holes in conventional thinking.
I like him already. What did he have to say about causality?
Well, he argued that what we perceive as cause and effect might just be a mental habit. We see two events happen in sequence, and our brains automatically connect them as cause and effect, even though we can't actually prove that one caused the other.
So he's saying that causality is just a story we tell ourselves to make sense of the world.
That's a great way to put it. It's like our brains are hardwired to look for patterns and connections, even when they might not actually be there.
So maybe I tripped on that banana peel because I wasn't paying attention, not because the universe was playing a cosmic prank on me.
Exactly. Hume pointed out that we can't directly observe the force or power that connects a cause to its effect. We just see things happen one after another, and our minds fill in the blanks.
Okay, my brain is officially doing backflips, trying to wrap my head around all this. So we've got science showing us that randomness exists, real-world examples where cause and effect are murky at best, and philosophers questioning whether causality is even a real thing. What are we supposed to do with all this mind-boggling information?
Well, that's the beauty of exploring these big questions. It's not always about finding definitive answers, but about expanding our perspectives and challenging our assumptions.
And it opens up some seriously deep questions about free will, the nature of reality, and even the future of artificial intelligence.
Whoa, hold on. We're going to need a bigger boat to navigate those philosophical waters.
Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. Well, I think maybe the answer isn't just a simple yes or no, you know?
Yeah, it's not always that easy, is it?
No, I think it's more about understanding that, like, the universe is this really complex place and there's always more to learn. You know?
Right, like we're trying to fit all these different pieces together and they don't always fit neatly.
Exactly. And maybe it also depends on like the scale we're looking at, you know?
What do you mean?
Like determinism might work pretty well when we're talking about like planets orbiting the sun or billiard balls bouncing around on a table.
Right, those things are pretty predictable.
Yeah, but then when you like zoom in to the subatomic level, things get all fuzzy and unpredictable.
So like there's a time and a place for order and predictability.
Exactly. And then there's also room for like randomness and chaos.
It's a delicate balance.
It is. And don't forget about the role of our own perceptions too, you know?
Oh yeah, like Hume's idea that causality might be a mental habit.
Right. Maybe the way we see the world shapes how we understand cause and effect.
That's a pretty deep thought.
It is. It makes you wonder if maybe we're creating our own reality in a way.
Okay, so what's the takeaway for our listeners? Should they be looking for cause and effect relationships in their own lives? Or just accept that the universe is basically a cosmic crapshoot?
I'd say it's a mix of both, you know?
Okay, I like that answer.
It's definitely fascinating to like observe how our choices and actions ripple outwards, you know?
Like that butterfly effect.
Exactly. But it's also important to recognize that we don't always have complete control, you know?
Right, sometimes things just happen.
Yeah, randomness and chance play a role. And sometimes those slippery slopes we fear turn out to be nothing more than like mental mirages.
So embrace the mystery, stay curious, and maybe don't skip your morning coffee.
Haha, sound advice.
Well, this has been a wild ride. Huge thanks to you for breaking down this complex topic and for reminding us that there's always more to learn and explore.
It's been a pleasure.
And to our amazing listeners, if you're looking to explore another dimension of life travel, whiskey, and intriguing conversations, be sure to check out the Mickytolife YouTube channel.
It's a great channel.
Yeah, it's a one-way ticket to adventure. Until next time, keep sipping, keep thinking, and keep those slippery slopes in check.